I read the news today, oh boy, about a lucky...
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Nikki, Aurora, and from me. I'm running late today, so I'm gonna have to just be super brief and plunge right in. But I don't know if you noticed the introductory song. I'm going to ask that photographs be posted, which will explain a little bit about it. Because, as you might be able to see, I was looking at the colour being truth with some chums. Prince Leo von Breitenthurn, who actually started this channel, it was all his idea, and Alison Brown, the wife of Tara Brown's son, about whom the Beatle wrote A Day in the Life. So we had a very nice time looking at Trooping the Colour. That is when we were totally distressed because Megsie Baby and H weren't there. We just suffering because Megsie Baby and H weren't there. But putting that aside, it was quite a spectacle and we had a wonderful time. And I'm going to post a little teensy-weensy clip of some of the action and of us there in front of the parade ground. Okay? So... we now come to... You can't make any of this up. Harry's visa records. And the refusal of the Department of Homeland Security to release them on the grounds that basically they're not important enough to be released and it would violate H's privacy. Well, of course, the Heritage Foundation has taken a completely different view. Now, I mean, this is also farcical, but it's also so very important. And you know what really interests me with the whole Harry and Meghan saga is, farcical though it is, it actually touches upon very important issues. And one of them that has been touched upon is that the lawyers for the Heritage Foundation, to try to get the Department of Homeland Security to speed up their response to the Freedom of Information Act request about Harry's visa application, the response was no surprise here as far as I'm concerned, because I'm apolitical in many ways and I understand the way power works. And as I've said all along, it doesn't matter whether the Republicans or the Democrats are in power, Harry is always going to be cut a break. Well, to the extent that it doesn't destroy either political party. But it's threatening to become maybe Harry's Watergate or maybe Biden's Watergate. But I don't think it's going to be Biden's Watergate because Biden's hands are dirty. He's simply, in this respect, he's simply just preserving the modesty and the possible illegality of one of his supporters. But anyway, the Homeland Security said, to the extent records exist, this office does not find a public interest in disclosure sufficient to override the subject's privacy interests. Well, of course, the Heritage Foundation took strong exception to that, as they rightly ought to have done. And they are going to be pursuing the matter. You know, Watergate started very small. This situation could start very small as well and develop into something profoundly bigger than it is. But I'm not predicting, I'm just entertained by the whole thing. Because really, if you don't laugh, you'd cry. And now I will plunge in with Quantum Entanglement, who says, Dear Lady C, the paparazzi have seemingly turned on Henry and the Viper and outed them for calling in the Paps to buzz Tyler Perry's house with drones. If the reports are true, this might mean an end to the friendship between the sausages and Perry. What has your little birdies told you in this regard? God bless. My birdies have actually been telling me a thing or three. Of course, the fact that Meghan is the one who called in the drones, I mean, it's unbelievable, is something that Tom Sykes, who is a very, very sound and accurate and terrifically well connected correspondent for the Daily Beast. And he got through Freedom of Information Act the fact that, oh dear, Meg's the babies. People are the ones who organise for the drones to fly over Montecito. And I mean, the lengths to which that woman goes to try to prove, whether it's to Harry or just to herself and the world, that she is of far greater interest than she is a moot point. Because, I mean, the reality is practically every one of their pappings have been orchestrated primarily by her. And the drones that were, we're so popular, we're so in demand, we're just, I mean, everybody's after us. Everybody's after us. It's just, I mean, I'm the reincarnation of your mother. I mean, I don't know how that works, of course, because Diana was still alive when she was born. But let's not let a fact or two interfere with things, because Meghan certainly doesn't. And will the relationship with Tyler Perry survive? I have an awfully funny feeling it's going to. I think Tyler Perry has been a very well Meghanioned. And maybe one of these days he'll be markled, but I don't think he's going to be doing much markling at the moment. But I have no in to Mr. Perry. And quite frankly, I don't particularly want one either. That is not the sort of circle that I think I would be comfortable in, and I don't think they'd be comfortable with me in it either. I think our values are too divergent. But I will say, dear Tyler Perry was very generous to the Meghannian who Markle's people after she's Meghanized them. So, I don't think, to summarize, it's going to be the end of the friendship, because I'll tell you why. Tyler Perry is most impressed with the fact that Meghan Markle and he have something in common. He has rather more than she has, but they have African heritage, African blood. And an awful lot of people like Tyler Perry will forgive anything. And of course, he might well fall for the line, well, you know, Tyler, I mean, it happened, but we couldn't catch them, so we had to do it again to make the point. You know, I'm such a victim. I'm always a victim. U2 says, Lady C, I love some of these names. Unless I'm mistaken, you indicated some time ago that Spotify was planning to dump Meghan. I did. What can I tell you? Montecito isn't that far away from Castle Goring. Not in terms of friendly mouths. Now we have confirmation from both Spotify and Archie. What can you tell us? Anything that the MSM might miss out? Well, I've not been an avid follower of the coverage, so I will simply tell you what I know to have been the fact, and whether this has been reported or not, I don't know, because I'm not au fait with keeping up with some of the reportage, let's put it that way. First of all, there's supposedly mega deal, which was, I forget whether it was $24 or $25 million, something like that, hinged upon success and repetition. You know, all these phantasmagoric figures that Harry and Meghan's people have been bandying around, 100 million here, 150 million there, 30 million here, 20 million here, 24 million there. I told you all along, it's rubbish. If she comes out of this with $10 million, she'll have come out of it with a lot of money. And remember, unless Delaware comes to her rescue the way roasting chicken does, she's also going to have to pay an onerous thing called tax. All of a sudden, that 10 million doesn't seem very much, does it? Well, it was predicated on success, and it was predicated upon productivity targets, the overall figure. I made this clear all along. Any figure they were bandying around would be the absolute optimum at the end of a completely successful deal. I also said at the time, when Spotify was trying to make out that it was very popular and that it was an outstanding success, that Spotify had been playing with the numbers and that Spotify had been actually cheating, really, to make it appear to be a greater success than it was. Sure enough, turns out what I said was absolutely right. The facts and figures now speak for themselves. Well, yet again, Meghan has disappointed people. You know, it's all very well to leave the royal family and try to seek your fortune. Had they done it nicely, as I've said repeatedly, it might have taken a little bit longer, but they would have been outstandingly successful. The reality is, Meghan has nothing to offer. She is at all times optimizing and maximizing the few slim assets she has. This, again, is why she was never a star. Because she's just, and I said it in my book, she's just not good enough. Sorry, she's not good looking enough. She's not intelligent enough. She's not interesting enough. She is just not enough. She is inadequate. And it came across. Also, my understanding is that Spotify were very disenchanted with Meghan because, and hopefully, I suppose I'd better say, for legal reasons, that this is the information I was given by people close to Spotify, that they found Meghan very difficult to work with, work shy, and not amenable to suggestions. And the content was lacking. And no matter how much spin they put on it, and trying to present it as a great success, it was a failure, as indeed has been Harry's book Spare, which again has been a failure financially. And you know, these companies go to great lengths to present a failure as if it were a success when they're dealing with high-profile situations. And you can see why. But it didn't save the job of the commissioning editor, who has had to leave. I'm going to read out a joint statement that Spotify and Archie Audio came up with. And here we go. Actually, hold on a second. Let's have a little flying pig do a little bit of a journey, because this is a claptrap of the highest order. Here we go. Spotify and Archie Audio have mutually agreed to part ways and are proud of the series we made together. No, they aren't. I understand that Spotify's spinning bricks. They found her difficult to work with. They found, according to people who are close to them, they found her difficult to work with. They found her tiresome. They found her awkward. They found her resistant to any proper suggestion. And evidently, and hopefully this is not untrue, they found her lazy. She didn't even bother to do most of the interviews. She's too up her own bum. I'm Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. You've just got to be so impressed with me. Also, the delivery lines were totally out. Nothing ever turned up on time. Nothing ever turned up interesting. You know, you can buff feces till you're blue in the face. Unless you pour oil on it and maybe some tinsel it's not going to shine. And they had to pour an awful lot of oil and tinsel on it. Evidently, even the Wall Street Journal has waded in to point out that she's not going to get the full amount. Well, I've been saying it all along, and sure enough. Now, let's hear what Megsy Baby had to say about this, because she wrote on the Archie website, "I loved digging my hands into the process, sitting up late at night in bed, working on the writing and creative." On the creative. Excuse me, that's not proper English. Anyway. "And I loved digging deep into meaningful conversation with my diverse and inspiring guests, laughing and learning with them. It has been such a labor of love." Somebody at Spotify said it's sick making, because she didn't even do most of the interviews. Honestly. Well, what's also interesting is that, sorry for laughing, she has so poisoned the pond in Hollywood, because I don't know if you remember, I've said it all along, Meghan was never popular in Hollywood, but she got her foot in the door when she married Harry in a way she was never able to before. And she was busy calling the shots. "Oh, I'm only going to work with top directors. I'm only going to work with top producers. I'm going to this, I'm going to that. Everybody's going to beat a pass to my door," and nobody's beating a pass to her door. In fact, everybody's beating bushes to get out of her path. There's also an entertaining corollary to all of this, because they have recently appointed somebody called Harrison Colcord, who used to work at San Isidro Ranch. I think she was the director of sales and marketing. And to those of you who don't know, San Isidro Ranch is a very exclusive hotel, and it's very ancient. Audrey Hepburn stayed there, Winston Churchill stayed there, JFK stayed there, and Meghan and Harry have employed her for Archie. And what did she do? She wrote a letter. I mean, none of this you could make up. They're so cack-handed, these people. That is a study in ill-bred correspondence. There is an Englishman in Montecito who owns a shop called Mad Dogs and Englishmen. It's a bike shop. And he dropped off a bike for Archie's birthday. So far, so good. How did he come to drop off a bike? And how did it come to be accepted? Now, I'm not casting aspersions on anyone, but their Megsy Baby, when she was in the royal family, she and Melissa Tuapti fell out because she was always approaching people for freebies and wanted to keep her hands on them. And evidently, the deal was that he would donate the bike by just dropping it off. And of course, Meghan would be surprised. The way she's surprised at everything that she orchestrates. Well, she should be surprised when anything succeeds, because so much doesn't. But surprise, surprise, the bike arrives. And this Harrison Colcord crassly writes a thank you note. It's a very short thank you note. It breaches every rule of civilized correspondence. First of all, your salutation and your, shall we say, sign off are always done in pen. So you say, dear whomever, and you sign off yours sincerely and your signature in ink. It is never typed. Never, 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 never. Also, in one paragraph, she managed to get in, I think 3 or 4 times, I think it's 3 times, that Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, in case you missed it the first time, because the note says, from the office of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Talk about tacky. But on the strength of that, our mad dog Englishman, and good luck to him, I have nothing against clever merchandising. What does he do? He then posts the note in all its inglorious tackiness, thereby getting publicity for himself. So Meghan and Harry have yet again exchanged regal dignity for a few dollars. I mean, the inelegance is beyond belief. But not only that, our mad dog Englishman has now come out with a brainstorm. You buy my bike, I'll give it to charity. Whatever happened with just giving it to charity, Mr. Mad Dog and Englishman? Brilliant merchandising on his part. I think maybe he and Meghan should go into business together. Maybe she'll be on a winning streak hereafter. Donna Roberts says, another Kentuckian here. I am a veteran of the US Army and very proud of my service. I'm very upset at Harry's using our Wounded Warriors group for a fluff and puff PR. He is a traitor to your and my country. He and his lying wife need to back up from such behaviors. I adamantly say, go away. They can provide no service to our heroes. Thank you and much appreciation for your honesty. I have got many complaints, both privately and in the comment section, about Harry's involvement with the veterans. Sadly, Harry and Meghan are now so tainted that nobody in their right mind wants to associate with them. That's my take on things. I could be wrong, and if I am, I apologize, but I don't think I'm wrong. I think I have my finger very firmly on that pulse. 48 D.M. Webster says, Dear Lady C, I'm no fan of Harry. However, as a parent I would be concerned about the impact of a divorce on Harry's mental health. My concern would be specifically a possible deepening of a state of depression that he already displays signs of, and whether or not that gets to a point of, and I'm not going to use the word, it begins with S, ideation. Harry knocked on the devil's door too many times, and the devil not only answered, Harry married her. Oh, God. But when he finds himself alone with absolutely no familiar faces to turn to, he may very well be in danger of himself. As soon as Meghan loses her precious title, she will kick him to the curb if she hasn't already. Your thoughts. Hugs to you and your marvellous girls. DM Webster, I expressed the fear of the royal family in my book. That what you are afraid of, they are afraid, or they were afraid at the time of the writing. In fact, they are more afraid now, could happen. There's nothing one can do. You can't rescue people from themselves. And you can't rescue somebody who doesn't want to be rescued. And it's very difficult to rescue self-willed know-it-alls who are never amenable to reason and fulminate constantly and make themselves into victims when in fact 9 times out of 10 they are the victim of their own personal failings, which have been played upon, admittedly. Yeah, nobody forced him to go to California. Nobody forced him to leave a perfectly secure environment and go to the ideal community property state in the United States of America. Nobody forced him to play butler to Madame, who thought that she was going to crack it big in Hollywood. Oh, Mr. DeMille, am I not ready for my close-up? I certainly am. C.Y. Cochrane says, Dear Lady C, love your girls. They are so adorable. Thank you. When do you think this court case will end? I'm so anxious about it and dread finding out that H won. I wish all press would refuse to report anything about the Harkles. I would love to see if she'd called for the press to appear and they refused. She probably would be speechless for the first time in her life. Much love. Well, the court case is listed, if I'm not mistaken, for 7 weeks. Harry is but one of many claimants. It will be interesting to see at the end of the day to what extent any of the litigants succeed. Because although civil cases have a lower balance of probability than criminal cases, much of this is massively out of time. And I'm afraid that even in civil court, well, it had to be. I suspected it. I mean, it had to be, you know. I turned up in a nightclub and all of a sudden the press were there. And it had to be my phone was hacked. It couldn't possibly have been that maybe one of the stringers from a newspaper was there, or somebody decided to make himself £200 and so rang up the press, or one of the waiters is a stringer. No, couldn't be any of that. And it couldn't be the fact that you jerk Harry had antagonized somebody and they knew that you wouldn't like being papped, and so what did they do? They phoned up the press. Oh, couldn't be any of that. Had to be that my phone was hacked. And remember, my phone was hacked 2 years before I had a phone. That's right, my phone was hacked 2 years before I had a phone. How does that work? Well, it's a massive try-on, but let's see what happens at the end of the day, because maybe there will be 1 or 2 points upon which some of the claimants prevail, or maybe the judge will take a strict view of the law and apply it strictly. Which begs the question, why is this case being heard at all? And as for the press not reporting on Harry and Meghan, unless they came to a compact, an agreement, and were all honourable enough to stick to it. I mean, there have been agreements before. For instance, in 1936, the British press chose not to report on the burgeoning romance of King Edward VIII and Mrs. Simpson. And that was only broken when Cosmo Gordon Lang, the Archbishop of Canterbury, prevailed upon an obscure priest to make a sermon that opened the floodgates. But these agreements are very hard to not only create but adhere to, because there has to be trust on all sides. And I'm afraid the good old days when gentlemen owned newspapers and newspapers were a gentlemanly business are over. You have rats, filth, and scum running them. And they see no reason to not stoop as low as they can, even to giving presents of dead ravens, in the hope that they will freak out and intimidate people whose lives they're trying to destroy. I make that point for what it's worth. Lesac says, "Dear Lady C, Aurora and Mickey, very early this morning I saw a video that had just been posted by Kate Middleton and the Queen. The video had some pretty stunning accusations about Princess Catherine. The video stated that there were many pieces of jewelry missing from the royal collection. What utter rubbish. I mean, why would Catherine need to take anything when she has access to everything? I mean, I've never heard such claptrap in my life. But let me continue, because, you know, there are an awful lot of very nasty and crazy people out there. Fortunately, not in our community, but there are. And the Sussex squad, for instance, is poisonous and lethal and has absolutely no compunction about telling the biggest lies about anybody they wish to discredit. Not that I'm accusing them in this instance. However, it's extraordinary that many of the lies that are told about the poor Princess of Wales can be traced right back to Mirror, Mirror, who's the fairest of us all? They claimed that the Queen is pressing the story of Meghan's parents being over 2.5 million in debt, and that Catherine has stolen the jewels to pay the debt after William refused to pay it. Oh dear. May I interject right here and say this is so preposterous it's beyond belief. First of all, the Middletons are a very respectable and decent couple, and they are very successful business people. And what happened with party pieces is across the board, nationally and indeed internationally, as a result of COVID, and what happened when the politicians and the medicos shut down the world. So these are the consequences, because this castle also is a part of the hospitality industry, and it has been severely affected by the economic consequences of lockdown. Very unfortunate that the firm ended up with 2.5 million of debt. It went into administration. It has been bought. I'm afraid it's ludicrous to think that a story of this nature could have any substance. And the only reason I'm reading it out is because it's so ridiculous that if it's not knocked on the head now, with repetition, it may achieve some gravitas. Anyway, to continue. They said that the Queen wants Catherine to cut off her parents for good. Utter rubbish. Camilla is one of the most family-orientated people you could ever hope to hear of. Utter rubbish. She is loyal as the day is long. I mean, this is insanity, this whole hypothesis. But I'm reading it out because this is the sort of rubbish that, if it's repeated often enough, might sway the gullible into believing that black is white. Have you heard anything about this? Oh, it is a very disturbing rumor, or Otis, a very disturbing rumor. Anyway, there's a typographical error here, I imagine. I'm afraid the damage to Catherine would be catastrophic. It's not going to be catastrophic, my dear. It's ludicrous. I mean, first of all, why would you steal what you have access to? I'm referring to the jewels. I mean, it's ludicrous. The whole thing is just so beyond stupid. And nobody at that level is going to jeopardize their reputation for 2.5 million, which may seem like a very great deal of money to people who don't have access to, well, let me just not pussyfoot around, to people who aren't very rich. But to people who are well off, 2.5 million is chicken feed. Really, sorry. Yeah, it's still good money, but it's not worth sacrificing your reputation for. It really isn't. I just make that point for what it's worth. Please tell me there is absolutely nothing to the rumor. There is absolutely nothing to the rumor. Thank you for taking the time to answer our questions and keeping this yellow rose of Texas informed. Yee-haw! Everything is bigger and better in Texas. I'm coming to Texas. Bev R944 says, the loss of trust in the mainstream media is probably one of the main reasons that Bell Media is in financial difficulties. even the Canadian grants that the mainstream media have received and the tax deductions of the costs of subscriptions to their programs have not made them financially rolling in the money. The mainstream media has, by its alignments and its playing with the news, has undermined its credibility. And unless you are of the prejudice and persuasion, usually politically or philosophically, that they regard as acceptable and desirable and that they are espousing, it's anathema. I mean, the reality is newspapers should be providing news. They should be providing all points of view. They should not be taking narrow perspectives on anything. And they do. Is it surprising? No, but there's also another reason for the failure of the mainstream media. And that is that we live as a result of the internet and YouTube and phenomena like that, which are very recent phenomena. We live in an age of 24/7 news, of immediacy. So most of the publications feel they need to keep up with rolling news. And they don't get it right, because although they will cut and paste and undermine their own position, they do it in such a way that they're not being even-handed. They're just being facile and tacky. And as a result of rolling news, people don't buy newspapers the way they used to. That's the fact of life. And this has affected advertising. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, you could get £100,000 for a newspaper serialization. Now, you're lucky if you get £5,000 or £10,000. That's the dramatic difference. And it's across the board. Loss of advertising revenue. However, I'm not decrying this change, because I think the internet, with all the hurly-burly and the conflicts arising out of differing views, is healthy. I think it's a lot healthier than the rigid politicization and propagandization of the mainstream media. And we end with Decadent Dina, who says, Prince Harry stood up in a British court and said his father's government and the press were at rock bottom. If this isn't a reason to have the Harkles removed from the official royal website, I don't know what is. And I'm viewing this spectacle stateside. I've read it out because, my dear, an awful lot of people agree with you, and I agree with you. I think Harry and Meghan have no place on that royal website. I think it is an ill-judged inclusion. I think it serves no truly higher purpose. I think it is plain plumb dumb. And I see no reason for Harry and Meghan to be on that website. I mean, it's actually offensive to anybody who supports the royal family that they are still included on that website. However, it's not my judgment call. I do not happen to agree with the person who has the ultimate say and is keeping them on the website, because I don't think that's gonna push Harry over the edge. And quite frankly, if it does, it does. But I don't think it's going to push Harry over the edge. I think that is over-egging the pudding. That is concerned people being disproportionately concerned, and concerned about the wrong things, and about the application of values that maybe should be adjusted. Certainly, removing them from the royal family website would give the message that they are not representative members of the royal family anymore. They stood down, they have abused everybody, and I think it is almost unforgivable that they are still being flaunted by the powers that be on that website. I think it's a huge mistake, judgment-wise. And who doesn't like it can lump it. Let's put it that way. What I mean by that is, who doesn't like the point of view that I've had? And I'm really referring to people in certain quarters who think, why did she say that? Well, I've said it because I think it's true. I think they should be removed forthwith and just done quietly. But he's not my son. Thank God. Thank God is all I can say. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please remember, keep the questions and comments coming in. Thank you so much. God bless. And if you have really enjoyed this, please remember to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell. Godspeed.